Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you today? It is Thursday and it's Thursday Morning Live. Hope your week is going well for you and things are falling into place. Hope you haven't been caught up in this weather situation this week. If you're somewhere in Chicago, the Midwest, or the Northwest, I know that it's just been nasty. I've been trying to get back to Chicago from Southern California, where I've been the last several weeks for some time in Chicago, and it took me 3 days to finally get on a flight and get back. But we're back. We're back in our home office and looking forward to a great week. So I hope that you're being intentional about what you're doing. And that here we are a couple of weeks into the new year already. And are you on track or off track? It's kind of funny. I've talked to a couple of people who have said, boy, I came out of the gate the first of the year swinging. It was going to be a great year. And all of a sudden, calamity after calamity happened. And here we are, right? So are you staying on track? Are you off track? Well, this morning, my guest, Michelle Kimbro, is from Montana, and she's with her company is MK Consulting, and she helps entrepreneurs deal with exactly that issue. So I'm going to bring Michelle in. We're going to chat a little bit. Before I do that, though, if you're new to the show, I just want to welcome you. If you have comments, throw them in the chat this morning. Put in the chat where you're from. We'd love to say hi to you. And if you're on social media, Facebook, like us, love us. If you're on LinkedIn, like us, love us, follow us. This is, we're here every Thursday morning talking about something to deal with being an entrepreneur, whether you're in the real estate space, the finance space, own a business, wherever you are in that journey. We're trying to bring information to you that's going to help you grow or go to the next level. So let me bring Michelle in. Hey, good morning.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. It's early.
It is. I know. What time did you have to get up this morning to get ready for this?
Well, I'm up every day about 5. So I got through all my morning, routine and was ready, I think, 5 minutes before we went live. So,
Wow. Well, we're going to come back and visit that because I want to hear about your morning routine and what that's all about. But hey, as I kick these episodes off every week and my podcast, I always ask one question, and I say, Michelle, one of these days I'm going to write a book about this and just talk about everybody that I've had on a podcast. But in one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
resilient.
Okay.
Resilient.
Why is resilient your word?
Well, multiple reasons. So personally, for some reason, God has a bigger purpose for me. He has plucked me from death 4 times. Recently was with COVID when I was in ICU, when the whole, I'm going to say it, pandemic happened. I literally was one step in and out of this world. I had 10% lung capacity, and I fought my way back. From professional standpoint, I have been a serial entrepreneur for majority of my life. I did have a corporate stint for a long period of time. I have owned my consulting practice. This is now year 11, even though LinkedIn says 10. I'm not sure. I think I mixed the dates up. And I have built businesses overnight. I have scaled businesses. I have crashed businesses, and I have rebuilt again. So I think professionally, that word resilience definitely hits home, because if you don't have a resilient mindset as an entrepreneur, you're not going to make it in the long game. So I think, 11 years speaks volumes to that word as far as my professional, career and the things that I've done.
Yeah, awesome. They say that most businesses fail in the first 5 years of being open. And if you make it through that 5-year period, it's not that it gets any easier. It's just that you have a lot more opportunity to be successful after that period of time. And, 11 years doing what you're doing is a long time. And congratulations for that. And, hats off to another 11 years, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I kind of liken that to jumping out of an airplane. So, the first time you jump out of an airplane tandem with somebody, it's not at, a really super high altitude. But as you get better and better, the altitude goes up. And so as an entrepreneur, that translates into that. The first step is always the hardest part, right? Taking that
Yeah.
first step into that journey. But it definitely doesn't get easier along the way. It just, your levels that you're dealing with in your business just get a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher, just like in that plane, each jump you go a little bit higher. And that's exactly what being an entrepreneur is about. Your levels of difficulty, depending on where you're playing in the game, just get a little bit higher each time. But they never, we pick our hard, right? So either you're gonna have a W-2 job or you're going to decide to go out on your own and be responsible for everything there. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I equate it. But spot on. Doesn't get easier.
Well, I always tell people I'm unemployable, so I picked a W-2 job early on in life. Realized very quickly that I always thought I could do it better than the guy I worked for, and always went and figured it out. So I think it is taking that jump. Now, when I think about you jumping out of an airplane, I get queasy about that. So that's not something I would do. Although, what's funny is I just had this conversation with my girlfriend. I said, I bungee jumped and felt like there was some security in that, you know, elasticity of that band pulling me back up, but I don't trust a parachute, you know.
Well, full disclosure, I've not jumped out of a plane because I don't like heights. But I have done other things like climb the mast of a sailboat and just to get over those fears. But yeah, I don't see the sense of jumping out of a perfectly good airplane.
Right. It's hard enough when you're in the air and they're doing this and like this and right.
Yes,
So
exactly,
hey,
exactly.
so being an entrepreneur is sometimes an easy journey, sometimes a tough journey, and I think we go through seasons, right? And it's just like winter, spring, summer, and fall. I think as an entrepreneur we have those seasons. I know for me in my life, and you mentioned this early, that part of the greater part of my success being an entrepreneur is my morning routine. And you mentioned that early. What is your morning routine like?
Yeah, I've done years of experience around this and just discovery on what works for me. And it's something that I teach in my business coaching group. But I think having that morning routine is critical because it sets the tone for the day. So I usually spend about the first hour of the morning and I spend it in prayer. I spend it, in gratitude and silence and just, releasing whatever things that I got up with so I can set the right tone for the day. I make sure I feed my mind every day. I read. I know some people like audiobooks, but for me, reading is something very tangible. I like to feel the pages and smell the book notes and, all that other stuff. But, there's also something about when you actually read a book, unless you have sight, problems like my dad, it just kind of seats that knowledge a little bit more. So I make sure that I read at least 10 pages a day. I'm reading a couple books right now. One is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, which is
Mm.
a phenomenal story if nobody has read it, very inspirational. And the other one is Alex Hormozzi's $100 Million Leads. Great book that just breaks down lead generation and lead magnets and automation, all that. So, I'm usually reading one or two books. I do about, 12 books a year, at least that's my minimum. And then moving my body. So that's super important that you are moving your body and exercising every day. So I do an hour a day, and that is either walking, weights, yoga, my elliptical, snow skiing, hiking, whatever. So I make sure I get out and move my body every day, because there is a huge connection between your body and your mindset. And if those things aren't right, you're not going to be able to function in your job if you have a W-2 position. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're not going to make it, because you're just going to be spun out and you're not going to have the energy that you have to put into your business. So those are, and I journal every day too. So, my process is I look at the day before, what did I achieve? What were my disappointments of the day before? I journal gratitude, and then I make my plan for the day. And the plan for the day are those critical tasks that I need to do to move either myself or my business forward. And then at the end of the week on Sunday, I do a weekly review of all the things that I accomplished and all of the disappointments, set the plan for the week coming up. And then those disappointments, if they're things that are within my control, that gives me an opportunity to improve and do better the week before. So that's pretty much my morning routine. Oh, and make sure you eat, because as an entrepreneur, we tend to forget to eat and hydrate our bodies. We just run, 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 run. And then we grab the quickest thing that's handy. Mine was like a piece of cheese and a banana. And what I found was that didn't serve me at all. My mind was cloudy, and yeah, I couldn't think right. And I would hit a wall at 2 o'clock in the morning. So make sure you're fueling your body properly with good whole foods, because all that processed stuff doesn't serve you, and it takes toll.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I do every morning, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
And I think it's really important that you're taking care of your mind, your body, and your soul when you get up in the morning, because that's how we serve others, right? And that's how we really get to deliver our message or help others grow, is by taking care of ourselves first. I always tell people, I say, hey, none of us grow professionally until we grow personally. And I love that you're reading, you're committed to that 10 pages a day. And didn't you just do 75 hard?
I did. And I tried to start it twice last year. I got 21 days in and my mom passed away. And I was just like, yeah, I'm out. I can't do it anymore, which was the wrong mindset. Right. And then this time I just finished it I think this Friday will be 2 weeks that I just finished it. Amazing journey. If nobody's heard of it, go to 75 Hard. It's Andy Friselli's program. And, although there's a lot of physical portions to it, that's not the whole thing. Though. It's all about building a resilient mindset and making yourself do hard things. And I had 3 failed starts this time, all because of something very small and simple. And that was a daily progress photo, which doesn't seem like it's much, but what I learned is all those small things in my life and in my business that I tend to dismiss or marginalize or say, like I think a lot of people do, oh, I'll just call that person tomorrow, or I'll address that email tomorrow. No, if you do that over time, you create this snowball effect. And next thing you know, you're not executing things in your business or in your life. And so going through 75 Hard, that was one of the big lessons that I learned, where it made me acutely aware of those things that I was just poo-pooing, like, oh, I can do that later. Or, like working out. I don't feel like working out today. I'll just do it twice as hard tomorrow. Or, you know what? I'm going to work out on Saturday or Sunday. No, that's the wrong mindset, especially as an entrepreneur, because like you said earlier, we chose this. And there is no check coming every 2 weeks. There is no retirement or pension at the end of our 30 years. It's us. It's all us. And not that we need to be doing the grind, 24/7. We need to find that healthy balance, but we need to make sure that we're not marginalizing those tasks that, even though they seem small, are going to move us forward.
Yeah,
So
100%.
yeah, it was an amazing experience. If nobody's done it, I'd encourage you to do it. It was harder than hell. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie, it was hard. But it taught me so much about myself.
Yeah. I bet there's a lot of lessons in that we can typically overlook in life unless we're looking for the lessons to learn. So,
Yeah.
hey, I know you do operations consulting for entrepreneurs and businesses. And I think one of the biggest things that happens to an entrepreneur is we get into, and this happens with me too, we get into a defensive mode where we spend time defending our business, the things that go on, the operations, the call from, in my case, a property manager or a contractor, where I don't get to spend the time being offensive and growing my business and doing the things. And we talked earlier about how businesses fail within the first 5 years, and I think that's a big part of it is we don't spend enough time growing the business. I heard a story years ago about two guys that went to work for the same sales company the same day, and one guy spent time buying a desk and getting his phone in place and getting a computer and his paperwork and files in order and getting everything set up, and the other guy didn't do any of that. He went out and just started calling on clients, and 5 years down the road, the guy who went out and started calling on clients immediately was 10 times more successful than the guy who went out and just bought the desk and bought all the furniture and the things he needed to get ready to get started. And I think we find that being an entrepreneur, so often we get distracted. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great point that you brought up. If this is your first leap in being an entrepreneur, and even if it's your 10th leap being an entrepreneur, I think, we tend to want to make things perfect. We want the perfect logo. We want to make sure all our marketing is perfect. We've got, a storefront, if that's what we're doing, it's all perfect with the branding and the colors and the messaging and all of this. And not to dismiss those things, but execution is key. And I think people get hung up on those things trying to make it perfect. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can start and be messy and figure it out on the way, because that's the only way that you're going to learn is by taking that first step. And how I talked about jumping out of the plane, it's the only way you're going to learn is just to get out there, jump, do it, and learn. It's okay if we have failures along the way, because they're really learning opportunities, aren't they? And they're opportunities for us to improve. Where I see a lot of business leaders failing is, they may have taken that first step and they're doing some things, and maybe they're scaling, but then they realize that they have a bigger problem because they did not set up the systems for their business to handle that scalability. And now they're frustrated because they're running around having to put out fires all day because they don't have good processes, they don't have systems to handle the volume of the scalability come in. And I think that's the other reason why a lot of businesses fail, is because they don't have the infrastructure. And as important as your idea is to get it out there to the market and to the world, you need to make sure that you have a good, solid infrastructure. And unfortunately, I'm usually the last stop on that. People come to me to help with their operations because they're bleeding revenue, they're losing customers, their employee turnover is super high. I would like to be the first stop on the book. But, when things are going really well, people don't think about, oh, how could we improve? How could we be better? So there's some sort of catalyst that gets to me. And that's one of the reasons why I started my business consulting group, because I want to be at the forefront and serve greater people so that they don't go through that pain and that angst of not having the infrastructure in place. And infrastructure, not only business, but, your head, your mind, your body, all of those things help stand up, a strong business. So that's what I've seen. And it happens even in the corporate world. You have a lot of leaders that, they don't. I've I've worked for many of organizations that I've done work with, and they don't have systems or
Mm.
processes in place. And healthcare, a majority of my experience is in healthcare, and I swear I could retire 10 times over in just healthcare alone because they just can't get it right.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's for sure. I love what you say about being the last stop. And what's funny is if you have a client, you can be working with that client, and then the market changes, and their revenue drops, and we're the first one as a consultant to that they take off of the books as an expense. when they need us the most. So I think that I've had a coach in my life, or two coaches in my life for the last 20 years, all the time. And I'm even working with a coach today on some business functions and systems that I'm putting in place. But when revenue drops and things go down, that's when they need us the most to help increase that revenue, to help increase that business function. What do you see around that in the space you're working in with entrepreneurs when that happens?
Yeah, and that translates into corporations too. If you think about it, the first thing that anybody does, whether you're an entrepreneur or an enterprise level organization, is you look at the bottom line and what can you cut. So yeah, consultants are the first things that go. The second line is they start cutting their staff. And then you start seeing, like we're seeing it in the headlines right now, Citibank and Chase, I mean, everybody's doing mass layoffs of like 10,000 people, Amazon. And that's what they do because that's the quickest way they think to get their bottom line and put a plug in that bleeding. But conversely, that's not the best thing to do. You need to look at your processes because I guarantee you that's where all the problem is in the process. And if you have good clean operating processes, especially if we're heading into a recession, start thinking about those things now because that's how you defend yourself against the market fluctuations like that, and that's also how you scale. You can't achieve those two things if you have no processes or broken processes, right? Because I guarantee you the guy up the street is working on that and that's going to
Right,
set them apart.
exactly.
Yeah, that's going to set them apart from everybody else. So you should do that too. So, and I agree with you, having a coach in your life, and it could be, everybody, I think they put a blanket statement on coaches, but there's all kinds of different coaches that serve a purpose. And I think they're so valuable because if you are in that situation that, the market turned and now your revenue is tanking out, having somebody with a different set of eyes that can lay on your operations or look at your books or see things from a higher picture because you're so ingrained in the business and it's your baby and you tend to protect it. And like you said earlier, very defensive, you're not offensive. So if you have somebody like that in your corner, they can ask those hard questions that maybe you hadn't thought of to get you thinking again. And so I think they're very, very valuable. Some you get what you pay for, and others are super, super expensive, but I think that there's a happy medium in there. And like I said, that's one of the reasons why I created my coaching group is so that I could have scalability and share this knowledge with a greater bunch of people. I mean, I love doing one-off projects, but it's one-off and I wanted to serve a bigger community. And with the coaching group, I can do that. And it's actually a reasonable cost compared to what you would pay for somebody that was giving you, one-on-one consulting time.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, we just had somebody ask a question, and they said, "At what point should you feel you are ready to launch and take the leap?" Systems and I think what they're asking here is when should you put the systems in place, like the logo, the business registration, things like that. Is there a checklist that they should follow?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, you want to do things by the book. So if you are starting an LLC, get all your paperwork and, do your DBA and get your EIN number. Those are just basic things of starting a business. But I wouldn't get hung up on branding. I wouldn't get hung up on logo. If you've got an idea, you want to, and this is the other thing that I've learned, and I've been guilty of this too. As an entrepreneur, you have an idea, right? And we're entrepreneurs because we're trying to solve problems that other people have, right? A lot of people, and you see this in tech, they have this great idea that they think is fantastic that the world should buy and it's going to fix everybody's problem. And then they spend all this time getting logo and branding and marketing and they put it out there and it flops.
Yeah.
Well, it flops because they didn't address the problem that the market had, that their, unique value proposition, that they didn't discover what their avatar was. What are they trying to solve? So, we talk about minimal viable products and things like that. You want to get your idea out there and test it before you start dumping money in logos and branding and ads and marketing and all of this other stuff, because you could literally spend tens of thousands of dollars and then launch your idea, crickets. And I've done it. I've been guilty of it. I don't know anybody that hasn't. But it is so defeating when that happens, because now you're in a reactive mode trying to figure out, why is it not fixing the thing that I thought it was going to fix? And again, and what I do, everything is centered around the customer, not us, the customer. What does the customer need? What does the client need? So build a minimal viable product, get out there and test that. And it's very easy to do that. Build a landing page. You can build a landing page for under $100 and just test it. Test it on social media. If you start getting some traction, then run maybe $20 a day and some ads on Facebook or something, and see if it's resonating with people. And all of that is learning, but you're not going to know if you have a viable idea or product or service until you put it to the market. So when we talked about jumping, that's what I'm talking about. Jump, because you got to see if your idea is even going to work.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Hey, why don't you tell people how to get in touch with you? Because I know you have some checklists and some things that maybe people can get from you, and you can maybe give some pointers or tips that somebody needs if they're in a place in their business where maybe they're trying to go to the next level, or they're even stuck a little bit and need to figure out how to get out of where they're at. So why don't you tell people how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to michellekimbro.com. I've got a biweekly newsletter that I publish that's around operational efficiencies, entrepreneurship, mindset. Great resource there. If you're interested in checking out my coaching program, you can go to coaching.michellekimbro.com. And I will also be releasing some digital courses within the next few months, things like how to use data for operational efficiency, strategic planning, and strategic deployment, how I am growing my LinkedIn and getting lead generation. So I've got some courses that I'm going to be releasing that if you subscribe to my newsletter, you'll be at the top, and you'll know all of those things there. I'm post every day on LinkedIn at 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, 7 days a week. So, please find me on LinkedIn, Michelle Kimbro again, and connect with me there. If you have any questions, more than happy to, if you send me a DM through LinkedIn, see if I can't help you out.
Yeah, and I know your content on social media has been awesome. I love to watch it myself. So, Michelle, again, it's been a pleasure having you here this morning. I appreciate you and taking the time and getting up early, because I know what it's like on the West Coast to have to get to a meeting at 6:30 or 8:30 in the morning. So, but one last question for you. I know you talked about a couple of books, Alex Hormozi's book and another book you're reading right now, but what's the best book you've ever read?
Oh, best book I've ever read, probably the famous Purple Book by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad,
Okay.
Poor Dad. Yeah, I mean, there's so many of them, but I think that book was so pivotal in framing money and the different quadrants that we work in and what we're trying to strive to do as entrepreneurs. I know he's big in investing, but that book really teaches financial acumen that we don't get in schools. And I know my parents, I mean, they had no idea about this. They worked W-2 jobs because that's what their generation did. And I have an MBA, and they didn't teach me any of that in my graduate program. So that book, I mean, it really breaks it down to layman terms that you can understand and explaining money principles. My second favorite book is The Creature from Jekyll Island,
Mm,
because that really tells you how money works.
yeah, I've heard that about that book. I'm gonna have to read that. So, hey, thanks for being here this morning. I appreciate it. And tell everybody again your website.
It's michellekimbro.com.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Hey, everybody. Thanks for your participation this morning. Thanks for the questions. And if I can answer any questions for you, don't hesitate to reach out. Just DM me. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and even on Instagram. But however, Michelle or myself could serve you in what you're trying to do or how you're trying to grow this year, don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great day. We'll be here next week, Thursday.